up for the next panel discussion on how to modernize, protect, and manage security with AI, zero trust frameworks, and stay ahead of evolving threats. As a moderator, we have Mr. Mohammed Nabil Mostafa, who's the global CISO with the Egyptian Arab Land Bank. Welcome, Mr. Mohammed.
Welcome. I want to welcome everybody from the audience and welcome our panelists.
Yeah, we have with us our panelists. We have Mr. Shahul Hameed from Department of Culture and Tourism in Abu Dhabi. We also have Dr. Yask Sharma, Mr. Jon Shaw from SUSE. We have with us Goutam Pudota from IFFCO Group of Companies. We have Anoop from Gulf News. Yeah. Sorry about the delay. We're running short by I think about a minute. And Dr. Mohammed, the stage is all yours. Mr. Mohammed?
Yes.
The stage is all yours. You can take it from now.
Okay. Now with the new digital age and new technology like IoT, AI, everyone using new technology, everything, which include propose new threats and evolving threats. And we need to think also that not only us as a security experts use the AI and this technology, but the attackers and hackers use it also. And there's a lot of attacks based on these technologies. Now also we have converted our scope of protection. Previously we talked about perimeter, start security from the perimeter. Now with the zero trust concept and zero trust framework, it's get different and we start from our jewelry from the inside. I want to start with our great panelist, Dr. Yask, especially is in different field, as in oil industry, to tell us about the impact of IoT, which is now heavily used in our world, and how it's impact OT, in area of OT, and how it's controlled by security controls.
Right. Thank you for having me here, and a good day to everyone. I believe my audio is clear. A quick check. Am I audible to everyone? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So the question is, so the question is around the IoT, and as you've rightly mentioned, you made one very interesting point that the technology that is being used by the defenders are now being used by the attackers as well in a much better way, probably. And the question pertains to IoT. With the introduction of IoT, what has happened, especially in the OT area, OT has always been a very distinct area. It has been to an extent air-gapped. Earlier we used to call it air-gapped. Now, although we are consuming a lot of data from OT in the IT, but the point is that it was always a funnel connection. The flow of data from OT to IT was restricted, at least, if not restricted, then at least monitored completely. With the introduction of IoT, what has happened is that the very nature of IoT demands that the data should be available on a real-time basis and should probably be available at a single point. Now, what has happened is that the funnel approach, as we generally follow one of these frameworks, whether it is the CSF, NIST framework, in which the layering model, the Purview model is there. It says that the flow of data from OT to IT has to happen through a certain channel. Whereas the moment IoT is brought into the environment, the IoT would require the data to be directly sent to probably a cloud, maybe a virtual one or an on-prem one. But the point is that it kind of collapses the whole model of security. I am unable to now monitor the traffic, which do not follow the restrictions or the flow as dictated by OT. Therefore, the impact of IoT on OT, especially in security, is large. One, because of this collapsing of the model. Two, the IoTs which are currently in market do not have a lot of security features inherently built into it. The typical nature of IoT is just to pick up some data, send it to the analytic tools and all that. So they are not meant to do a lot of security at their end. Therefore, coupled, these 2 points coupled together result in a situation in which the security practitioner now finds it difficult to even go to the basics. We talk about the fundamentals of security. We say that identification and then protection is important. Here, the identification and protection itself is getting impacted by introduction of these newer devices into the environment.
Coming to your end word, identification. That get us to how to get alert early to get response, because time is a critical factor in this, in attacks and contains the attacks. I will move to Dr. Annamária to tell us about the importance of and how early warning system can get us protected against new attacks and involved attacks.
Thank you for the question. We were talking about how to get ahead of threats and what are intrusion detection system and how AI can help us. Well, early warning system is enforcing trust and collaboration among cybersecurity centers, among central competence hubs and other entities by offering trusted and secure incident handling, collaboration, and early information sharing capabilities. The early warning system is actually challenges the idea of zero trust, what is our topic today, by giving out information and accepting help maybe on a very short period of time without actually validating everything through. And many modern detection systems, what Dr. Yask was talking about, intrusion detection systems, will wait until a critical asset had been compromised, and then the system send alerts, or some others only just analyzing logs or network data, and they generally do not provide enough detail. They do not tell us how the cyber attacker originally gained access to our systems and networks, or what would be the next target. And with the uses of AI, early warning systems can help us in understanding more information, having a deeper analysis and research on different intrusions and attacks, and giving us scenarios, getting us prepared what will be an attacker's next move. And it also provides threat intelligence, incident correlation. It can be used if one of our department attacked in an organization. We can get prepared which one can be the next one, or what is actually the target of our attackers. And most importantly, time-sensitive situation can be answered with very prompt replies using early warning systems, but it needs collaborations and trust between those partners who are participating in building these systems and sharing information.
Okay, great insight. I want to move to Mr. Anoop. Now, everyone talking about AI, as Dr. Annamária mentioned that it used for early warning and get us more protection features and others. But on the same time, the attackers and hackers can use it and start attacks like deepfakes and other things. Also, it's built on its strength on how much data it uses. What if the attacker uses data? Is AI good or bad thing? It has benefit or it's became a threat to us?
Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for the question. And Trax Events, appreciate that you included me in this panel, and hope to give you the right answer. And hello to everyone. AI, as we all know, it has got a good side and bad side. It can be a benefit and a threat as well. It is simply a simulation of human intelligence, right, converted into a human computer language. and it has got immense potential. We'll talk about the benefit only, like the way we talk about the fire. A fire has got a lot of benefits, but the fire has got a bad impact as well, right? How do we manage it? That is a question, right? So the good side of the
Yes.
fire can convert into an energy. Fire can be converted into a light. So the same way, the benefit of this AI, there are immense. It's huge potential we have for security operations, especially, or the entire cyber activities, or even the operations. We also that say like detection, response, and even alerting, user behavior monitoring, like the way we just now discussed about the early warning system. So everything we can apply this AI, and definitely it's a business unless it is not configured or harnessed well. So then it can be a danger as well, like the fire, if you're not controlling it, or even our car's acceleration, the petrol we are doing, that is the control, but we have a steering and a brake. So if we put the right control, this is the best thing to move forward, I feel.
Okay, I understand that it's all about how to manage it and how to control it to get benefit. And as discussion goes, now we see that AI and machine learning and this technology became essential and mandatory for security, cybersecurity, to protect our infrastructure and our environment.
Yeah. And that brings in a lot of cost saving as well.
Exactly. Now I want to ask Mr. Shahul how it's mandatory to see. Do you see it as mandatory for cybersecurity, and how we cannot get it, not use it?
Hi, thank you, everyone. I believe I'm audible. You will be able to hear because I see some echo in my room. Is it fine? Fantastic. Right. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to participate in this panel. And as you rightly said, AI is something which we cannot ignore, at least at this point in time, right? As my peers have already touched base multiple different things, whether it be IoT or OT, or it could be any other type of internet connected devices. All these devices are exactly increasing the threat landscape, right? So day on day, people are coming on with internet enabled devices, and it's very rare that we see devices without an internet these days. So more the internet connected devices, the more risk and the more threat landscape is getting increased. So it'll really become a difficult task for anyone to manage such a huge infrastructure if they do have such type of mixed environments, right? And artificial intelligence is something which will help us to learn the patterns, as the other gentlemen have said. Without this artificial intelligence, the machine learning is something which will help us to adapt to scenarios. In the past, what we do is we mostly have to be in a reactive manner, looking into the SOC, identifying the alerts, looking into the incidents, go and block. So that approach, even though it is still in there, but we have to be a little bit proactive, and in the combination with those reactive approaches. So it's not something which we can avoid the reactive process, but the proactiveness have to increase. So only without the help of machine learning, it is really difficult for us to get into the proactiveness, because machine learning will help us to understand the patterns, and machine learning is also something which is similar to the heuristics method which we used in the past. 10-15 years back, when we install an antivirus, it asks us an option whether you wanted to enable the heuristics mode. So even though the machine learning and artificial intelligence have been there for some time, where we evolved from there. So machine learning uses heuristics at certain point in time, where we know how to solve a problem and we feed the system how to solve the problem. But machine learning helps us to adapt by itself rather than we telling the machine what to do, right? So artificial intelligence will help us to proactively adapt ourselves, and it also gives us the capability and flexibility to react to any incidents in advance, so that we are proactively informing the users, because the threat these days are mostly from phishing, because no one from these days attacks a network from outside, because every malicious actor knows the perimeter is very well defended. So the insider attack is more, and it always starts from an insider breach. whether it could be a biggest breach or it could be a small attack, either it's a ransomware or it's a data leakage. Everything starts from an insider place. So first, the awareness part have to be there for every end users. That is something which we cannot ignore. At the same time, monitoring all the systems which are interconnected. So artificial intelligence requires data enrichment. So the more the data you feed, and it takes some time to learn by itself and adapt to your environment. So reactive actions or a proactive stuff or a rule optimization which is specific to your entity is not going to be the same which will be for my entity as well. So it has to learn based on the environment. So that learning process will significantly take some time. That is something which we cannot ignore. So it is prone to errors, but it's not something which is will have a lot of false positives, right? So definitely, as other gentlemen mentioned, it is always going to be a cost saving, but also it needs to be looked into another angle. The more the data you feed into it, you have to be ready to spend the cost for that infrastructure as well, which is something which we cannot ignore. If the data are if not more data are ingested, definitely the learning process is going to slow down, and the proactive actions which are going to be taken is going to be less compared to a human interaction, is what I feel at the moment, Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Shahul. I want to go to Mr. Goutam. Now, with the digital world and the metaverse, and now everyone using AI, even the normal users, and of course our attackers use it. It became like a war between AI and AI, cybersecurity and attackers. What do you think?
Yeah, so as every new technology comes, the cybersecurity teams need to be ready for our understanding of this new technology and see what are the components that is enabling this technology. So if you look at metaverse, the digital identities play a key role, and many organizations is going to place a lot of data in the metaverse. So how we are going to ensure that utilization of artificial intelligence and machine learning to look at user behavior analytics, so that you will be able to combat the new age threats. And also it brings an interesting challenge because metaverse also have a component of hardware technology like your VR sets, your headsets, which can actually lead to physical injuries as well, so if hacked in a right way. So it becomes key challenge to understand the software component analysis and hardware component analysis. So it kinds of like a combination of a typical IT and OT combination that comes in metaverse as well, because you're looking at both software security and hardware security as well, because it depends on where you're procuring these sets, where you are what kind of firmwares are inserted into these sets, from that to what kind of a metaverse you built in, and what kind of data you are hosting in your metaverse and who is able to access it. So it also comes back to how we enable zero trust, so that you will be able to verify each identity of a person who is trying to give a digital avatar to himself to log into the metaverse. It's the future where we see a lot of real world business interactions could happen. So it's we also people now started calling it Web 3.0 as well. So where your company's brand image will depend on the kind of a secure metaverse environment that you are trying to host and your data is out there. So it becomes extremely crucial for cybersecurity to understand this and use latest tools to secure it.
Thank you, Mr. Goutam. Now, Mr. Jon, now we talked about zero trust, and it depends on from access from inside start the protection. And as Mr. Shahul mentioned, now threats start from inside users, not from outside, and need awareness, and zero trust depends on identity management and others. And Mr. Goutam mentioned the digital identity. How do you think the role and the importance of AI in implementing zero trust framework?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So I think I feel quite lucky to be working in the containerized world, because in most organizations, containerized worlds are particularly immature. You know, some of the larger global organizations are well down the journey of containerization, but when it comes to AI and zero trust, you almost have a blank canvas to implement that from the beginning, right? As opposed to legacy environments, maybe IoT environments that have been very well established and have been stood up for years and years. So what I see is that organizations are embracing zero trust. There is a need for that because they recognize that it is an insider threat, not an external threat. Certainly when you're looking at containerized environments, which is the route that most people are going for application development these days. I believe that, you know, the other fear is around creating zero trust is that they're almost putting their crown jewels perhaps in an external cloud provider. So you may be using a Google Cloud or an Azure. So you're putting, you know, very heavy strategic workloads or applications into those environments, and you need to ensure that you do have that zero trust. You need to know who's coming in, who's going out, who's connecting, what they're actually doing in those environments. So being able to build a zero trust from a containerization point of view, I believe should start right at the beginning. Yeah, it isn't sort of go and develop your applications and then think about security. It's a case of implementing security from the beginning of that journey. So the AI and the zero trust model should be part of the plan day one, as opposed to waiting till after the event. And, you know, if you're starting with that in mind, you're going to build secure applications, then it should be regardless of where you host those or where they sit, whether it's in an external cloud, a hybrid cloud, a private cloud, you know, security is already baked into those applications. So it's extremely important to have that zero trust model. And to be able to build that, you need to be able to leverage, you know, the intelligence that already exists, perhaps from the learnings of legacy security tooling, as well as, you know, cloud-based security tooling. So yeah, extremely important. And I think it needs to be built in right from the word go.
Great. Now we need to understand more about zero trust, which built on no trust, even for internal users, which at new culture, our users not used to it, because years back we used to categorize users or zones based on trust level, semi-trusted, fully trusted. Now this is all not exist anymore. What do you think, Dr. Annamária, is about implementing zero trust in a sector? Depends on trust and how to this culture.
I think it's a very interesting question. When we talk about zero trust, we do have to understand first what does it mean. And as John said earlier, like this is a model, this is an architecture. And first it was developed by John Shaw in 2016. He published a well-known article about the zero trust model. So it's been a while back, but in the past months, especially since the SolarWinds attack, zero trust has been the most used buzzword in our community, in the cybersecurity. Everybody's talking about it. But what is actually zero trust? Like, it's a strategic approach, a technological approach that secures an organization by eliminating implicit trust and continuously trying to validate every single stage of the digital interaction. And the principle of zero trust is never trust, always verify. But you might ask, what is my personal problem with the zero trust approach? I believe that proactive cybersecurity defense is based on efficient and effective collaborative information sharing. Of course, we do have to protect our organizations, but sometimes what I feel, organizations taking it wrong. Zero trust doesn't mean that you're not gonna trust anybody. We have to know that this is how we build our own systems, what are the techniques, what we're using, but we still have to share information with each other. This is why I was talking about early warning system. It's only working if there is a collaboration. So no public authority, no company can say that they are good on their own. They will solve their own cybersecurity issues. They can answer all the threats. And that's the problem. Many times these days, zero trust approach is making organizations fear of collaboration. And sometimes they can push this approach to their employees. So maybe the employees are also afraid. They will feel that their own companies are not trusting in them. And this is also a link to the insider problems, like those employees who don't feel trusted, they also don't feel loyal to their own company. So I do believe that CSOs and CEOs have to have this idea that zero trust is not a policy or a strategy. It should be a technical network approach. And we have to answer that question. If there is a zero trust in our cybersecurity domain, then who is the organization? Who are those people we can actually trust? And I think that's the hardest question to answer.
Okay, thank you. Understand that how to manage the implementation of zero trust with the in the same time give the employee a feeling of trust and to give us their loyalty. I'm interested to ask Dr. Yask, especially his different industry, about implementing zero trust in OT environment. Is it currently practical in such environments?
Right. So, I would extend the comments that Dr. Annamária made. In fact, she made one very interesting observation about the collaboration piece. While she did talk about the employees and all, collaboration happens to be one very important aspect when we are looking at zero trust. And as she mentioned, that continuous validation is one very important aspect. Now look at the OT environment where there is a lot of dependence on the OEMs. The trust is inherently built into the running of a typical OT system. Now we are talking about a zero trust in which nobody, while this concept is correct, while this idea is something which really would address the concern of this implicit trust, there are certain environments in which this probably does not seem practical as of now. One needs to understand a typical OT environment wherein the dependence, even for as simple as an antivirus, the updates have to be qualified or validated by the OEMs because they would not want anything unwanted to come into the system. Therefore, the customer or the end user is dependent on in a way, trusting the OEM to run the system. So that's point number one. Therefore, the practicality of OT in an environment where there is so much of trust required is difficult to achieve. The second point is, when we talk about zero trust and actually implementing practically, it requires a lot of threat intent to be built into the system. While we say that it requires a continuous validation also requires continuous feeds. If I have just one single stream of feed and that, based on that, I have given a certain access or restricted, my continuous activity requires this feeds to be continuously updated and not just from one set of source. So therefore, in an OT environment, which is highly contextualized, the stream or this intelligence has to be pulled from so many other places in which, again, I would have to share the data. I'm actually circling back to the same thing. I am trying to stop the data flow or trusting or sharing and reaching the same place back to achieve the same purpose. Therefore, practically, it seems as a concept, the overall ideas might not be achievable as of now. However, certain components of it, especially the micro-segmentation, the initial validation, or maybe even during the flow of the data, some kind of a validation that seems practical and is going to add a lot of value. But what I'm currently seeing or observing across the globe, that is, in the OT area, there is a lot of resistance, apprehension, even from the technical people to implement this or bring it into the environment as of now.
Okay, thank you. I want to get back to Mr. Shahul. He raised the point of insider threats. I want to ask him about how implementing the zero trust framework strategies impact the future of securing identity of the users.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you all. Right. So looking into the discussions happened before, everyone has got different aspect what the zero trust is. So in case of zero trust, it's always a situation what we have to think is we are always breached, right? So when we say we are always breached, the backend infrastructure has to be segmented in such a way the horizontal spread, or we can say what we said, like the attack being propagated within the horizontal have to be contained. That is what the main aim of a zero trust architecture, not to make this breach spread across your infra, right? So that is only possible if you micro segment each of your segments, like web layer separate, the database layer separate, mid layer separate. Try to micro segment all of them into as much as smaller as possible. Yes, it is not something which is directly feasible to immediately go and convert your traditional infrastructure into micro segmented infrastructure. It is a phased approach, and you need to go for uh, modern apps. Predominantly, this is only possible if you move to the cloud, because these days on-premise infrastructure are limited in terms of hardware, in terms of technology, and if you need to really move into zero trust architecture, the investment or the capital investment what you need to have is huge. So the ideal scenario to have a zero trust architecture is suitable if you're on a cloud. And there are so many clouds, and we and the government, we have some restrictions where we have to host our data. So beyond that, the first thing is to microsegment your network architecture so that the horizontal spreading is less. And then verifying the identity, as Annamária said, you need to verify every individual and you need to give them least privileged access. Verification is one step, but the access what the user gets have to be the least, right? So here we are not compromising the collaboration in any way. We are just enabling the user to get the services and the availability of the services what they want, right? Need to know basis and not beyond that. So limiting such type of access is only possible if we use technologies such as software defined perimeters. All these zero trust came into existence, or this become a talk of the town how when the pandemic hit, right? When the pandemic hit, everybody was not ready to have the remote working capabilities, and everybody started using VPN because that is the only easily available remote access mechanism available at that point in time. That also enabled malicious actors uh, to do what they wanted, right? It becomes a low-hanging fruit for them because end users, when they are inside the network, they are trusted and they are secured from the perimeter. And that trusted network and that untrusted network, which is the perimeter, that approach is completely collapsed when this pandemic hit. So the concept of trusted and untrusted is no more there because the users are no more in your office and they are not to be trusted anymore because they are not sitting in your office. They are sitting in a coffee shop. So our backend infrastructure has to be ready to handle the users irrespective from wherever they work. They could be in a coffee shop, they could be at their home, and expect them not in office. That is our current scenario, and that is where everyone is moving towards, right? So that is only possible if we implement a zero trust architecture. And to enable those stuff, we have to enable a bare minimum a multi-factor authentication to verify the identity. In case if we have not done that, I strongly recommend to have multi-factor authentication enabled, which will avoid the identity attacks, which is the basis for the zero trust. So if MFA is not there, you are not even getting into the level of ZNA, right? So we have to verify every individuals. We need to provide them the least access, and then we need to micro-segment the network. That is how you have to approach the zero trust network architecture. This way we can limit the breaches within the organization.
Okay, thank you. Now everyone talking about implementing technology, new controls, and new architecture for implementing zero trust, and also huge input of data to enable AI features. And we talked before, discussed before with Mr. Anoop regarding AI good or bad thing. As a CISO, we considered as a business leaders, not only security leaders. What about other aspects for the organization, like operational cost, like user experience and performance? Because Our main mission is enable business to work in securely and efficient way.
Thanks, Mohammed.
What's the fact? Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly I want to highlight here. Pandemic brought in a lot of constraints and a lot of opportunities as well. We should agree that, right? So the constraints is definitely the business and the revenue diminished, and definitely the budget constraints started. However, we have to provide this mobility as well for users to work from home, cafe, or wherever they go. So we are actually one of the early adopters of the virtual desktop wherever you go. It follows you. Okay, we have established, being a newspaper company, we are number one English daily in the Gulf. 2006 itself, we followed this concept of the mobility for our photographers and reporters. Wherever they go, their virtual desktop will follow them. There are different technology used. And those days, revenue was not an issue, and we could achieve that. So pandemic literally broke everybody, and they need to invest on technologies for this zero trust model, because security is no more optional. It is mandatory for that purpose, right? So budget was a question, but the features it's going to bring, the zero trust features are literally granular to the way we operated traditional VPNs. Here it is more transparent. It gives more, like Dr. Annamária explained, and even Yash explained about, even the Shahul explained about. That is the granularity, the transparency of the traffic, devices, and the user, and that brings a lot of pleasure for CISOs like me, or the organization CEOs themselves, and that balances the cost part. So it gives a lot OpEx, definitely CapEx reduced, but OpEx you can manage it based on the number of users and stuff. I think still it is affordable on that front, but still a question of investment.
Okay, thank you. I want to move to Mr. Goutam. Now we talked about technology, operational cost, and performance. What about the most important pillar of our cybersecurity? People. How utilize AI to increase our human intelligence against cybersecurity threats and cybersecurity awareness?
It's absolutely one of the key points that the industry we face, because if you see people, the first thing that comes into mind, anybody says cybersecurity as much as technology. If you see 80% of the successful attacks starts with phishing against any organization, but the amount of emphasis the employee awareness gets against any technologies that we want to place is always not in a required proportion, I would say. And what are the challenges we face when we want to give employee awareness, right? The practical aspects of it, what I have seen is three types of challenges. The challenge number one, the adoption rate of the awareness trainings that you want to launch, right? Because there are various generations of people that works across an organization. There is a generation X, then there is a generation Y, and then there are newbies, and each one of them would like to learn things in a different space on a different level. Some likes the modern way of doing things on a gamification method, and there is a generation of people or a school of thought where they would like hey, it's something to do with office. Why do I need to play a mobile game to learn about it? I would like to sit in a classroom environment to understand about security. So how do we balance these two is one aspect. The second aspect, that the practical challenge is, how much time do we really get from a business user? For example, if he's working in a like a photographer, how much time can you get from a photographer for a cybersecurity training? How much time can you get from a operational technology engineer or a factory manager? And how you will, there are so many roles across the organization, and how do you generate security training specific to their role so they can relate it to their day-to-day business? And the third aspect, the great pandemic that has brought is, in general, the human beings with the millions of years of evolution, we are bound to react in a certain way to a physical environment we are in. That's how our neurons are reactive. For example, if you go to a new hotel and try to sleep, there are many of us who will struggle to sleep in the first night. That's just because of millions of years of evolution that is still living in our brain, trying to tell you you are in a new environment, don't try to sleep. Some animal might come and attack you. Similarly, the people are suddenly working from home or working from cafe, as the other gentleman was speaking, instead of from office. So our guard against security is generally slightly lacking. And this is the opportunity where people are exposed to. And with recent attacks that we are seeing in the esteemed organizations in last 1 month, even the MFA is breachable. So this is where the employee awareness becomes key. If you can bring in the best in breed technology with keys, FIDO keys, physical security keys, but if your employee is giving it away, then there is no stopping. Any CISO cannot do anything about it. So getting that buy-in from business is very much important. The second aspect that I've learned where I could use technology to help combat this problem is about using artificial intelligence to analyze statistics on your emails, the phishing content that you're getting, to see who is your highly targeted users. So you can focus your trainings, you can adopt and reactive, more proactive on them, and then see the users who are less likely to be attacked. So that analysis you could use, and also using simulation techniques to understand out of these highly attacked users how many are much more prone to get phished. And continuous feedback is the third thing, and which is very important, so that you can adopt your training needs depending on the person's interest. Because for some reason people always try to pitch in cybersecurities for office, but I would say it is as much as like a road safety. So you need to teach kids how to cross the road, and here you are teaching employees how to cross an internet superhighway. So security is as much as at home as much as in office. So it's a behavior that you need trying to bring in a change, not just for the purpose of the something to do with office work. That's what I see as a new way of doing things.
Totally agree, especially to change culture, we must feel it's for their own benefit, which will reflect as a behavior and culture to the organization. I'm interested. I got great insight from all of you experts and learned a lot. I want to end with Mr. Jon as somehow of wrap up how to get use of AI and zero trust framework, which we discussed a lot of aspects to protect our organization against new evolving threats.
Yeah, I think as some of the other panelists have suggested, in particular, Annamária, collaboration is key here, right? You need to involve multiple departments within the organization. You can't just rely on the security guys to get it right all of the time. Yeah, so there are multiple areas of the business that need to be involved, not just the users, maybe audit, maybe legal, et cetera, right? So there are plenty of people that are involved in getting to that zero trust model. I think Shahul did a great job of explaining, you've got to micro segment the infrastructure and the IT infrastructure so that you know what you're dealing with, right? But I think first and foremost, the key to this is gaining visibility. How do you defend against something when you don't know what you're defending against, right? It's the old analogy of getting on top of the hill and being able to see the battlefield, if you like, so you know what your next move is going to be. So I think when you're talking about implementing zero trust, what you've got to start from having that viewpoint from the top of the mountain or the top of the hill, so you know what you're dealing with, and then you can break that down into sections, and then you can bring the right people in that need to be involved in that. So I think, as I said at the beginning, I work particularly in containerization, which is reasonably new, right? So it's a clean sheet of paper. It's easy to get that view because lots of organizations are starting from that clean piece of paper. When you're talking about things like IoT, that becomes really, really difficult. How do you get that visualization of the IoT landscape so that you can start to implement a zero trust strategy? That becomes very, very, very difficult to do that. So again, it relates back to having the right people involved, the employees that you trust within the organization, to be able to use the AI technology, but more importantly, for you to collaborate and actually get that trusted zero trust framework in place. I think the other key point as well is that you can't just put a zero trust framework in place and say that's done and forget about it. You've got to continuously review that, right? Because these technologies, these environments are evolving so quickly, especially when we start to talk about cloud infrastructure, right? It's moving at lightning speed. So you've got to have the mechanisms in place to use that team to review, is this zero trust policy still correct? Is it still fit for purpose? Are we still able to continue the business or whatever we're trying to achieve? So I think, you know, continuous collaboration, continuous review, but most importantly, you know, you need to understand what you're dealing with before you start to implement this. This isn't just a quick piecemeal, yeah, that's a quick fix and we'll throw it in the back and, you know, we'll carry on with normal business. That would certainly be my view.
Great. I think you managed to brief most of the point mentioned. I want to add also one point mentioned, how to control and manage technology and zero trust to get the benefit out of it, not to get threat out of it, as Mr. Anoop mentioned earlier, and that the threats now mainly depends on human factor, and the threats exposure came from insider user more than outsider user. I want to thank you all for the great insight, and I learned a lot from you today, and I hope audience get a lot of insight of AI and zero trust framework. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and leading the conversation here. And thank you to all the panelists, Dr. Annamária from the Óbuda University, Dr. Shahul Hameed from the Department of Culture and Tourism from Abu Dhabi, Dr. Yask Sharma from the Indian Oil Corporation, Mr. Jon Shaw from SUSE, Mr. Anoop Kumar from Nisr Publishing, and Mr. Goutam Pudota from IFFCO Group of Companies. Thank you all so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.